Greetings humans, this is Unfrozen Caveman and I wanted to show you my Endergenic Generator setup. If you've been looking for a good setup, you may have already stumbled across Mizuna's videos. If you haven't, that's who I stole this design from. I'll leave a link in the comments. This setup uses 12 total Endergenic generators. On the outside, there's a ring of RFTools sequencers to set up what I would call the boot timing, the startup timing. So every time a new Ender Pearl gets injected to this generator, these sequencers are setting they first set it to charge and then to fire. Oh no, they just set it to charge before the first one gets injected. So what happens is, and this is really pretty much one-for-one rip-off of Mizuna, but I had Mizuna's setup, but I had some difficulty getting it to work, and I did make some of my own changes. So this is just really to help you if you're trying to make the same kind of setup work. First off, I have an RFTools timer with the delay set to 35 ticks. So that, you see, I'm using two different colors on the redstone conduit. So the initial timer comes out red, and all these have these sequencers. The input for all of them is red, and then I have a single Ender monitor. Wait, that one's just there. That one is not actually being used. Knock that off. Just trying different things, but it turns out I can get away with one if I have it set to the generator that is the first to fire, but the last to receive. But anyway, the first time when a pearl is injected, that happens at 14 ticks after the timer goes off. Then this should fire at like 15 ticks after, but it's a little hard to say. There's for every piece of timing, there's like a plus or minus 1 tick wiggle room, I would say. This setup, all of the generators being right next to each other, they're 1 tick apart, and it should take 12 ticks for the pearl to get all the way around to do 1 lap, because that's 12 generators, 1 each. From as far as I can figure out using these generators, the pearl doesn't need to sit in a generator for 1 tick, except for when it does. So, okay, so this first one, that's 14, and then number 5. We would expect that to be number 4, but it's number 5. So that's, okay, so timer starts, tick number 5, we start charging. And then the running timer on the inside, the running sequencer on the inside will tell us when to fire. This one starts charging at number 6, 8, not 7, and then 9, 10, 11, right, 12, is it 12 again? 12 and 12 in a row, and then 13, and then I have to, for the 10th generator in the sequence, Mizuna doesn't have this, but I have a boot timer set up, and that's at 15, so it goes 13, 13, 15. And then I have these running timers on the inside, and they each have, okay, so we saw, oh, it's very important, this particular generator has a direct connection to the timer. So the timer outputs signal on red, and one of the places that signal goes on red is to the very first generator to receive. Let's make it nice and daytime. Alright, the running timers on the inside, the very first generator that needs to be told to fire. So this one I call number 1, the first one to receive. It first receives let's see. Yes. Okay. Its initial firing signal comes straight from the Ender monitor. This Ender monitor is set to fired, so it outputs a signal when Pearl is fired, and instantly we have you can kind of see that green connection to this first generator, and then the sequencer is set to charge at number 4, at tick number 4. I would kind of expect, because it should be 12 ticks all the way around, I would kind of expect the gap between firing and charging to be just, well, there to be just 1 tick in between, but it doesn't quite work that way. It might work on your end. Anyway, so it's charge at 0, or I'm sorry, fire at 0, charge at 4, fire at 1, charge at 4. Wonder if I think I got this timing about as perfect as I can, so I want to mess with it when I see this, but we have 2 and 5, and then 4 and 7, so that I think the same one on the outside skips 1, and then 5 and 8, and 6 and 9, 6 and 9 again. I think just like on the outside, those repeat, and then we have 7 and 10, and 9, 10, 11, 12, 9 and 12. And now we've gone, let's see, so that's 9 and 12. And now I think the timing, nope, timing continues as normal. So 10 and 13. Here it doesn't though. Here we're, so what this is the charge signal, and this is the fire signal. And this additional tick is probably not needed at all. Let's see. Yeah, so here I don't have that. So it goes, yeah, tick 1 and 9, 10, 11. So there is a 10 tick gap, exactly, which equates to, well, I don't know, you would think it would equate to, but so that's 1 and 11, and then 3 and 13, right? Okay. And that works pretty well. If you do have this set up and you're using Ender IO conduit, you'll need, I mean, you have to connect to every generator on the inside, but for the output, if you're using the whatever the top tier energy conduit, for generators that are not infused to have maximum output, you need at least 3 output connections on a capacitor, say. So why is that? What is happening here? Okay, so I have these quantum quarries set up just to have a place for all the energy to get used up. And if I disconnect it, you should see what kind of output I'm actually getting. So it's about 47,000 RF per tick. And if you didn't know, by the way, using an Ender capacitor bank to get that kind of a screen, just right-click until it turns into a screen, and then if you have multiple screens, they'll connect like that if they make a rectangle. But if you break it like that, then you have a bunch of little screens. I've struggled a little bit with the not too much, but been a little bit confused by how these capacitor bank multi-blocks work, or how they work as a multi-block. Yeah, if you didn't know, they make a great multi-block structure. And then for output, it's the same way. Okay, so I guess what I'm trying to say is they have a maximum output or whatever transference of just over 20,000 RF per tick, but that's per connection. So if you have this much power production, you need 3 connectors, and then if you infuse the generators, they output 50% more RF. So in a survival world, anywhere you actually care about how much is being output, you should definitely infuse them once you can. That takes a lot of what's it called, the dimensional shards. That's 4 stacks per generator times 12 generators is a bunch of stacks. Can I even do 4 times 12 in my head? Well, 48 stacks. 48 times 64 dimensional shards. It might take you a while to get that, but with this kind of power output, you should definitely be able to do it. By the way, I also wanted to say that I've tried a number of other setups, Endergenic Generator setups. I had, well, that one's a little different, but I had, okay, one basically like this. This is a popular setup I've seen on YouTube, and I had this set up in my survival world where it uses 4 generators, and they all use Ender monitors pushing into sequencers. All the generators are 2 ticks apart. And when I had it set up, all of the generators receive their pearls on tick 9. And if I tried to fix the timing, it would make the timing worse for the rest of them. And what I think is actually happening is 2 ticks, 2 ticks, 2 ticks, 2 ticks. So although generators are 2 ticks apart, that's only 8 ticks. And maybe with older versions of RFTools, maybe the pearl would sit in the generator for a tick, like necessarily, but here it doesn't. And one thing, when you're trying to set up the timing and get this to actually work, you see that right there, that RF lost 500. So I'm using the smart wrench from RFTools, by the way. When you see that, that means is like, as far as I can tell, I'm pretty sure it's correct. That means that you're consuming RF by holding the pearl. So maybe on that, when it goes around once and does lap 1, perhaps because there's a gap of 3 between 0 and tick 4, whereas the rest of these just have a gap of 2 between them. It might be right there, but overall it works, and this is a test setup. So now I'm going to go into my survival world and show you that. Okay, so this is my survival base Endergenic Generator setup, and right now, well, it's kind of up and down, but I've got this set up with this bank of capacitor banks. It holds a total of 150 million RF, and there you see it. It's almost 70 million RF coming in, and what I'm consuming. Okay, right now it's stopped, and you can see what I'm consuming right there. It's less than 2,000. So what this is actually producing when it's running is over 70,000 RF per tick. So I'm pretty happy with that. In order to get that, once again, that's with the 50% bonus for using 100% infused generators. I assume if you're running RFTools, you're also running RFTools dimensions. That's what you need. I don't think there's any other way to get dimensional shards and infused stuff. If you don't know much about that, I advise you to check it out. Certainly if you're going to use this setup, this kind of power generation setup, I would strongly encourage you to learn how to create and travel through dimensions. Anyway, let's look at this setup overall. So first of all, one thing that's different, I have a logic gate here that's set to all 3 inputs must be on for the timer signal to launch, start the boot sequence, I would say. So one thing is this lever, and when I was first setting this up, I made the mistake of, how did I do it? And well, I set up the lever in such a way that it was giving an input signal to one of the generators, and that was no good. You don't want that. So anyway, the timer goes off every 30 ticks. So that's got to be on, or that's got to, pulse. This has to be on, and then this also has to be on. This is an Ender.io power monitor. It's pretty great. I don't know a block like this that's better. There are other blocks like it, but this one emits signal when storage is less than 33% full. So you can set that whatever you want, and stop when storage greater than or equal to 67% full. So basically, I want when this multi-block is down to 50 million, when it's under about 50 million, so 1/3, I want the generator, what would you call the whole thing? Because they're all little generators. Anyway, I want this contraption to run, and then I want it to stop when it gets to 2/3, about 100 million RF. It's possible that that last pearl can keep going a long time. So sometimes I'll see this get up to 120, 125 million RF, which means that pearl lasted at least that much over 100. It's probably possible that one can max me out and get me all the way to 150 RF, 150 million RF, I should say. But I think typically, I really am not sure. I want to say they're somewhere in the, I don't know, somewhere around 5 million, maybe it's 12. I want to say maybe in Mizuna's video he said that. But let's look at the timing. It's a little bit different than my test world one. And by the way, this jumping is ridiculous with this living armor from Blood Magic. It's like Mario. So anyway, I have the first, the pearl being injected at 14 ticks after we get the timer signal, and then this is going into charge 4 ticks after the timer signal. So that's what you would expect. And then 6, so 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and then this one is 15. So that's pretty typical. This one I put the running timers on the outside, and I can get down to it from the corners. So let's see, this is the first one, right? Yes. So it's, now this one is more what makes sense to me. So it's got the 0 input on the green channel, and it's going, and then so it's basically 0 and 4, 2 and 5. Right? and then 3 and 6. 3 and 6 again. 4 and 7. 5 and 8. 9 and 10. I'm sorry, 7 and 10, not 9. And then 8 and 11. 9 and 12. No, on the last 3 here. And then 9. Wait, so it's 9 and 12 and 9 and 12? Yes. And this one, this is different. In my test world, I don't have it set quite like this. So it's basically that's a 0, just like the first one. And that, whereas the first one is supposed to charge at 0, this one fires at 0 and then charges at 10, right? Is that right? No. Charges. I may have said that backwards. It charges at 0, fires at 10, which is what you would expect, because you want it to catch it on the 10th tick. And then here, we're charging on 2 and firing on 12. And when it runs, let's see if I have my, I don't have my wrench, my RFTools Smart Wrench. So I've got some, I wanted to run my quarry using an RFTools builder quarry and an RFTools dimension, mainly to get more dimensional shards so I can infuse everything. And by the way, so this is my ME storage monitor showing how many dimensional shards I have. Can't believe that I have that many right now. But it's not running, or it would be going in this chest. Let me see if I can't run myself out of power real quick. Okay, now you can see the quarry is running and a lot of power is coming out. It's going to get right down to about 50 million and it should kick on. And then we should see a surplus of about, that's about right. Yeah, 50 million. It's not the RFTools builder. What is happening? Oh, hi. You're not allowed here. Please don't mess this up. Thank you. Well, I wanted to show what's going on when it runs with the Smart Wrench. And if you can see, all of them are showing last curl at 10, and they're all showing RF lost 0. That is what you want. And if you're going to lose some RF, if you have to do it on the boot sequence, that's not so bad because that's only 1 lap. Then you should have no RF loss. That's really how you want the timing set up when it's actually running. After when it's into the run part. You definitely need to experiment for a while to get this to run, to get it to work effectively. It's not something you can just follow the instructions and it works just fine. It will, if you follow the numbers that I have here or the numbers that I have in my test world, and you do everything exactly the way I've done it, there's a really good chance it just won't work, because you start with the initial timing, getting the boot sequence right, and then when to where sometimes you might have like this first one, for instance, because basically any sequencer can need to be like 1 tick ahead or 1 tick behind where you would expect it to be based on the previous one. Does that make sense? Like, how some of these are the same, and some of them, the difference is 2 ticks between them and not 1 tick. So, like this very first one, being 0 and 3. What did I say? 0 and 4. Being 0 and 3, you can. It might need to be 1 and 4. You know, so having this connection right there might not be the answer. I don't know. There's a lot of things like where, you know, setting it up exactly like this or how you would expect it to work, it won't even make it around one lap. So you first want to get the boot sequence set up where it goes all the way around, and when you're looking with the smart wrench, you don't want to see any lost. I mean, they are lost randomly, but you want to see that last pearl arrived on 10. You want to see that for every single one, and so you start at the beginning because and you also want to see RF lost 0. If there is some RF loss, that means you need to fire the pearl faster. Probably. I mean, maybe there's other ways to lose RF, but that's generally what that means. So you need it to fire sooner. And when you change that, let's say all 12 generators are catching on 10, but some of them have some RF loss. Once you fix that timing so it fires it, now everything else is going to get it 1 tick sooner. So like if you move it, you know, you understand what I'm saying? So if I don't want to do that. Let's see, this is, I'm looking at the boot. I don't want that because that's just the charging. So if I'm looking at my run timing and this one isn't firing soon enough, I would change it from 2 to 1 to make it 1 to make it try and make it fire 1 tick sooner, which, you know, that can fail too. Sometimes because the different ticks are pretty close in sequence, sometimes when you think you're firing here, you're actually firing here, so it's holding. It might be, maybe this is the ideal tick right here, and you have it set here. What will actually happen is it will fire here, and then it won't charge, and so the next time around, it will, it'll lose the pearl, and it will say pearl arrived while idle. So you'll see that in your tooltip with your smart wrench, or you can use the one probe. That one's a little different. It doesn't show it in real time, like you have to actually go and look at each piece. I think with I don't remember, a shift right click or something. Does that make sense? So getting these to work just right, you may want to leave off the charge tick initially, just to get it to go where it's going around first. So that means it won't work on the next lap, but just to get that first go, the timing for the first go around, because I had to do that to figure out what was happening, to find out that, you know, the charge tick is actually where it was firing. So it's really tricky. I do like this system a lot. It's not terribly expensive. Each generator costs some diamonds, and you do need a lot of ender pearls. If you have extra utilities, you could use the Ender Lily from, Extra Utilities 2, which, I don't know, that mod you could argue has a lot of things that some might see as OP. Not having to kill Endermen to get Ender Pearls is kind of makes this a little bit easier to run. But I do think the power of this power generation system, it's really in having to fiddle with the timing and get it just right. Like that's what you're being rewarded for with that kind of power. And honestly, like building a big reactor setup is pretty resource intensive initially, but once you have that going, there's not much to keeping it going, and you don't really have to fiddle with intricacies of how your chunk is updated, if that makes much sense. I think that should do it. So yeah, that's my this is my new base. It's still under construction. I don't have anything to use that much power. My RFTools Builder quarry is running a Fortune quarry, which is 600 RF per block. That's the base, and then I guess different blocks cost more, or tougher blocks cost more, I guess. But it's more than enough. The power generation I have is far more than enough to keep that running indefinitely, and my inventory system is far more exhausted far more quickly. So, and that's using applied energistics. I got little ones, medium ones, bigger ones, and a few of the biggest ones, if you know what you're looking at. If you don't, it's not that big of a deal. It's been a real chore. I'm using a Direwolf 20 mod pack, and actually getting applied energistics to work on a large scale. I've used it before, but never quite on the scale I'm getting it to operate at, where I've got multiple machines constantly, well, not constantly, but pretty much constantly processing ores, all that kind of stuff. It's managing all the channels and all that. I think it's pretty though. It looks cool. The colorful cables, controllers are pretty. That's all fun. But yeah, that's going to be it for me. Please, if you have any questions on setting up, I've spent a lot of time messing with the Endergenic generators, and it really wasn't until I found Mizuna's setup that I found one I really liked and could make work. To be honest, a lot of them. A lot of the setups that I found in videos or on forums, a lot of them I literally couldn't get them to work at all. Like, couldn't get the Pearl to do a whole lap and continue. And that may be because there have been some changes in either how the mod works or how updates work from different versions. But yeah, so that's my Endergenic setup, and you people have a lovely day.